I would love to ask how many of you are here, well, how many of you are attending a Loft event or conference for the first time today? Wow, that's a really good number. Okay, I'm always just really curious about that. So a big welcome, especially to the first timers. We're really glad you're here. And certainly welcome back to all of you who have taken our classes and attended our conferences in the past. I'm just going to do a little introduction on the Loft, very brief, for those of you who don't know much about us. So founded in 1974, the Loft Literary Center is one of the nation's leading literary arts centers. The Loft advances the artistic development of writers, fosters a thriving literary community, clearly, and inspires a passion for literature. We have more than a half a dozen programs for writers in our education department alone, including adult, online, and children and teen classes, conferences, and free first pages sessions at area libraries. This free program is soon expanding from a program that serves one county, which is Hennepin, to a program that serves 8 counties in the metro region with free 90-minute introductory sessions in creative writing on everything from novel or memoir writing to finding an agent, forming a writing group, and getting published. So if you're interested in continuing your relationship with your writing and with the Loft after this conference today, we have a lot of options for you, including free options. And certainly we would love if you would decide to be a part of our community and register for some classes. We do also have grant and fellowship opportunities for writers through our program and education departments, including the Mentor Series, the Shabo Award, the Emerging Artist Grant, a Teaching Artist Fellowship at Madeline Island School of the Arts, and the list does go on. I encourage you all to stay connected to the Loft via our website and our writer's blog online at loft.org. I also want to let you know that this conference is made possible by the voters of Minnesota through grants from the Minnesota State Arts Board, thanks to a legislative appropriation from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, and by a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. So thank you, NEA and Minnesota State Arts Board, for your free registration today and your lunch, and for the amazing Rosanne Bane and the rest of the teaching artists that we have been able to entice to come here and present some amazing sessions on creative writing for you. One last detail before I turn it over to Rosanne. I would really appreciate it if you all would take the time to please fill out the evaluation form that we have provided to you in the red folder that you all received at check-in. We do have extra copies if you forget to bring your folder back tomorrow, but that's really the only way we can really hear your feedback, and it really helps us learn what we're doing right, what we're doing not so right, how we can make future conferences better. I would really appreciate it if you take just 5 minutes to fill that out. You can also come talk to me at any point. I do actually love to hear feedback, so please come and find me. I'm wearing pink. You are also, this is new for this conference, if you do turn in an evaluation form, you also have the opportunity to fill out a little ticket that we'll draw. I'm not sure how many names yet, we have to kind of figure that out, but we'll draw some names, and the winners will receive a scholarship to take a Loft class, either this fall or this winter spring. And that would be a full scholarship. So, but you only get to do the drawing if you fill out your evaluation forms. And I'm going to be placing the evaluation police right by the ticket drop. So you have to promise me to fill out those eval forms. And now I'm just going to go into why you all are really here. Writing, creativity, and the 50 and better brain. So I'd like to introduce our keynote, Rosanne Bane. She's the author of Around the Writer's Block, Using Brain Science to Solve Writer's Resistance. And she's a veteran teaching artist at the Loft and other literary arts centers. The owner and operator of a 50 and better brain herself, she was delighted to learn that a mature brain is in some ways better than a younger brain. Her goal is to transform audiences into fully engaged writers who are willing to explore, play, and take risks. And she really wants you to learn to write. All will be explained in just a moment. Rosanne is now going to engage you in a discussion about creativity and the 50 and better brain, so let's welcome Rosanne Bane.
Thank you, everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right, good. So, what I really want you to do is learn how to write badly. So I'll explain that later. So welcome, everyone, to Creativity and the 50 and Better Brain. And I just want to get a feel for the audience demographics. So if you would, please stand up if you are 50 and better. Should be pretty much everybody. Excellent. Yay. So stay standing if you are 60 and better. If you are 70 and better. If you are 75 and better. If you are 80 and better. All right. So the people who were standing last, do you mind saying how old you are? 88? 81? Someone over here? Oh, okay. Someone back there was standing late. Do you want to say how old you are? In the 80s. All right. Thank you. Did you want to say? No? Okay. All right. So I have to tell you that I love the title, the phrase 50 and better. I think that is a brilliant way to talk about it. And the phrase was actually coined last year for our first Writers 50 and Better conference by Brian Malloy, right here. Yay, Brian. And in honor of Brian's brilliance, I'm going to give him a brain. These are stress brains. You know, stress is very bad for your brain, so you put your stress here, and it saves the brain up here. All right. So, what is it about being 50 and better that we like? You all have some experience with that. So, if you could, speak as loudly as you can, but tell us, what do you think is good about being on the other side of 50? Yes?
What I think is really good about it is that my skin is loosening.
Mm-hmm. All right, easier to live in your skin. Excellent, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, back here in the orange.
Life experience, made enough mistakes to write about it.
All right, life experience and have made enough mistakes to write about it. Here you go, coming back at you. Good thing we have the tables. Yes?
Don't care what other people think.
I don't care what other people think anymore. Excellent. Hang on to that thought, I gotta restock. So what else is great about being 50 and better? You were raising your hand.
Less catastrophizing, because you've seen it and you know if you ride the flow that this too shall pass.
Less catastrophizing, yeah. Here you go. Excellent. Another way to say that, if you can't say catastrophizing, is we're calmer. We've seen it all, we know if we stay with the flow, it'll be good. But I love catastrophizing, that's a writer's word, yes.
You have a much better idea of what's really important.
Yeah, you know what's important, you know what you can let go of. Excellent. Oops, sorry. Yes?
Being invisible, which allows for free passage.
Oh, being invisible, you may have noticed when you turn 50, suddenly people don't notice you anymore, waiting in line or whatever, but it does allow you free passage, so it makes investigative reporting that much easier. There you go. Oh, sorry. Yes? Less willing to put up with bullshit. There you go. Oh. As a matter of fact, between our 40s and about 65, we are at our peak for what a friend of mine calls the bullshit detector. We are at our best for judging character and assessing situations to see what's good and what's not good. Past 65, you might want to ask a younger 50 and better to give you a little advice. Yes, back here.
But still more forgiving, I think.
More forgiving. Yes. There's a lot less
I
of...
want to see you pitch that way back here.
All right, I'll try. Oh! That did not work as planned. Okay, let's try it again. Whoa! Well, we're going to have brains all over by the time we're done. So, here, I'm going to pass it to you. And you can pass it back. We'll just relay it back there. Yes. Being part of this elite group of people. Excellent. What else is good? Yes, back here. Freedom. Free to write and free in general. Yeah, we're more confident. We trust who we are a little bit more. See if I can get it back to you. No. Relay that on. I got to restock. Wish I had bigger pockets. Okay. Yes.
We know time is passing. We know we have to be reflective if we're going to make a difference. It's now.
Yeah, we have a sense that time is passing and now's the time to be doing things. Excellent. Now's the time to add your voice to the chorus. Yes. We are living longer and healthier. This is true. 50 and better keeps getting better all the time. Yes. I haven't reached the discounts yet, but I'm looking forward to it. Yes. So freedom, specifically from children. There you go. You know, the phrase empty nest syndrome, that came from one study of one group of women who were already clinically depressed. So we don't know why people say empty nest syndrome. The rest of us are walking around going, I don't know, I feel kind of guilty, I don't miss them at all, I'm glad they're gone. All right, we'll have a couple of more and then we're going to move on. Because we could be at this for a long time talking about the things that are better, about 50 and better. Yes?
We have more stories.
We have more stories to tell. We have more experience. So we have more stories. Yes, back there.
More experimental with writing.
We are willing to be more experimental with writing. Okay, Steve, heads up. I'm going to toss it to you and then you can toss it back. Hey, not bad. Yes? Our kids pretty much ignore us, so we can pretty much ignore them. There we go. And over here. When you retire, you have time to do what you want. Excellent. Here you go. Okay. Yeah, which is obviously not throwing them either. So, yes. Yeah, less judgmental, more accepting of people. We can actually see the other person's point of view a little bit better. We're more empathetic. You know, when I was 20, it was all about me, me, me. And when you're a teenager, it's about me. But you're hyper aware of what other people think of you. Oh my God, what do they think? When you're 50 and beyond, it flips. You don't care what people think, but you're more willing to be forgiving, to be empathetic, to be there, to be of service. So it's a nice little switch that we have going on. Anyone else? Yes.
We have a broad base of knowledge. We don't memorize things as quickly. However, we integrate. The brain wants to integrate. So sometimes it's easier to make decisions because we have a broader base to base our opinions.
Okay, so several points in here. She said we have a broader base of experience, which is absolutely true. So we have more to make our decisions on. And it may be harder to memorize something, but you are better able to make a decision. So that kind of experience that we've had. So here we go. Oh, sorry. Obviously, we need experience in tossing brains. So, yes, Salvador.
Well, for me, it's the passage of pride the older I get, because everything works because nothing hurts. I've given up being dependent on other people for their approval. I was a free person now. And when you grow up as a minority, such like I did, you look
letting go of the need for approval, which is particularly important if, as Salvador said, if you're one of a minority group. It's very freeing, so thank you very much. So, 50 and better brains we are happier. We get happier throughout our entire lives. It is so much because of all the things we just said, but we are generally happier. We are calmer, we get experience, we're empathetic, we're confident, we're able to see the big picture. 50 and better is able to get the gist of a situation. And we are unique. The older we get, the more unique we become. In a really good way. Okay, by the way, what we just did, is called priming. If you give people in a group positive words and positive associations for their group, they will perform better on cognitive tasks like memorizing something, or learning a list, or listening and learning as you go, or taking a test. On the other hand, if you give people negative words and negative associations about their group, they perform worse. So literally, it feels good to say, I'm 50 and better. It actually makes you better to say, I'm 50 and better. So what I'd like you all to do is turn to someone on your table, shake hands, introduce yourself as, hi, I'm Rosanne, and I'm a 50 and better writer. Okay? So everybody do that. All right. So now you know a few people at your table. One of the things that the Loft does so well is create a community for writers to be a part of. And socializing is really good for our brain. So, two birds, one biscuit. We've fed 2 birds with 1 biscuit. So, now that I've primed you all positively, we all have this positive impression, I have to admit that there's a little bit of nervousness under that. Like, there's a yeah but in there. And it's almost like we're whistling in the dark, Nothing scary here. No reason to worry about getting 50 and better. Can't remember why I came into the kitchen half the time. No reason to worry. So, let's just bring that out into the surface. Let's take that little underneath nervousness and just lay it out on the table. So, what is it that scares you about being a writer 50 and better? Anyone? What's the nervous thing? Yes? It's never going to turn out the way I want it to. In the back.
Never gonna have time to write it all.
I'll never have time to write it all. Oh man, that is so true. And we keep getting more stories all the time. Okay, I'm going to pass it back partway and then we'll relay it to you. I don't know, we went to this presentation and she threw brains at everybody. Yes?
I have so much to write that you don't need it. I have a break. That I can't focus on the completion part of one or another. Maybe that's just the ADD thing.
Difficult to focus and complete things.
Yeah, with so much choice. I mean,
So many choices, so many things to choose from, as she said back there. Yes, Steve?
I get ideas while I'm driving, and which can I write it down. By the time you write I write down.
Have a great idea while driving or in the shower. And then you think, oh, I want to write that down, but you can't. And then when you do go to write it down, you can't remember. So not being able to remember all of your great ideas. Yes, in the back, in the purple.
By the time I finally get around to doing it, I'll run out of time.
Oh, by the time I finally get around to doing it, I run out of time. Is that about the distractibility?
No, that's about life being short.
Okay, all right.
Over
It's,
50.
it's about life being short when you're 50 and better.
Right.
All right, so I'm gonna pass it back halfway, and then we'll forward it. Yes?
If I were to be hugely successful, it would be change me and my life and my writing, and it wouldn't be, wouldn't be as great as I thought it would actually be. Horrible.
Okay, so if I'm wildly successful, that might be scary.
Successful, wildly.
Just successful would be,
Successful.
I wouldn't know how to handle it.
Writers say it's not so great being published. Don't be in a hurry.
Yeah, she says it's not so great being published, don't be in a hurry. I think there are some parts that are really great about being published. And then there's some parts that are not so great. So, yeah, it's like everything else. Back in the green,
It's too late and I've wasted my chances.
is it too late? Have I wasted my chance? Pass this back, please. Yes.
My body revolted after I retired and wrote for 10 hours a day.
Okay, my body revolted after I retired, writing for 10 hours a day is not, all right, good, got a brain. So what are the questions? So one of the questions that came up in the back is it too late? So do you have other questions, things that you're wondering about? Yes?
Feeling I've been at this 20 years and I'm not where I thought I'd be at this point. Is it ever going to happen?
Is it ever going to happen? Am I ever going to get there? And let's face it, underneath that question there's the, what if I die before I finish? Yeah, okay, pass that back. All right, ooh, other concerns, yes?
Will there ever be a market for poetry?
Will there ever be a market for poetry is the question, and I'll pass you a brain for that. I do want to say that that is a question for poets of any age. But you start to feel a little more 50 and beyond. Yes, Greg?
The media landscape is changing in ways that I don't get.
The media landscape is changing in ways I don't get. Can I keep up? Can I compete with younger writers? And maybe, do I still have what it takes? Yeah, yes?
Socializing is healthy and writing is a solitary occupation.
Socializing is healthy, and writing is a solitary occupation. And that's a good question. So how am I going to find time for my writing when I'm busy doing all these other wonderful things since I'm retired? Yeah, okay, great. Yes.
The closer I get to my creativity, the more I just want to play.
The closer I get to my creativity, the more I want to play. So is play compatible with creativity? And I would suggest that it is. There you go. Yeah. Yes.
One thing I found out from my stuff, editors, how old you are, never mention your age. And another thing is, from when I was talking about writing and ideas, what I do, mini tape recorder.
Couple of suggestions from over here. Don't tell people your age unless they themselves are 50 and better, and they might appreciate it. And get a little mini recorder. Okay, so hang on to those thoughts. So these are some of the questions that I anticipated. Am I losing my mind? And we're going to come back to that in a minute. But I just want to say thank you all very much. It is not surprising that we would have some fears about growing older. After all, our entire lives we've been told that this is not a great place to go to. Let's face it, when we were younger, when I was growing up, I was taught in science and health class that you were born with all the neurons you were going to have, and your brain got better in childhood, and then it was at its peak on one golden afternoon somewhere in your 20s, and then it was all downhill from there. We were taught that I actually believed this message in health class, that if you did drugs, or you drank alcohol, or sniffed too much gasoline or magic markers, you would destroy neurons in your brain and you would never get them back. That was it. You had all you were going to get. And so that's kind of scary, the thought that I just keep deteriorating, that my brain, I'm losing my mind, I'm losing my brain. The good news is that nearly everything that we were taught is wrong. Yay! Although I do have to say I'm a little disappointed I didn't have any fun in high school and college, because I believed it. And now I'm 56 and I still can't remember stuff. Why I came into the kitchen. All right, so the truth is that the brain creates new neurons throughout your entire life. We get more neurons when we're younger. Children are doing, it's called neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons. Children are doing it fastest. It does slow down as we get older, but up until the time of our death, our brain is creating new neurons. Okay? By the way, the new neurons come from an area in the brain called the hippocampus. Don't worry about that. But if you wanted to remember, you could imagine a hippo charging through a campus. And the hippocampus is very susceptible to stress. So if you didn't get a stress brain yet, get one after the presentation, or I might throw one a little bit later. So these neurons grow throughout our entire lives. They've done studies with people who've donated their brains. They put a tracer in their bloodstream so that they could identify the new neurons, and there are new neurons at the time they died. And these are people who have cancer and getting cancer treatment. So you get new neurons throughout your entire life, and our brains are far better able to heal and grow than we ever knew. In fact, people who have strokes, I tell my partner this: if I have a stroke, send me to Edward Taub's clinic, because what he does is he put, say I have a stroke on the left side of my brain and I lose function in my right hand, what he'll do is he'll put an oven mitt on my left hand and a sling so that I can't use my left hand anymore, and then I have to use my right hand. What happens is, in a stroke, some neurons are killed, but others are injured. And if you don't try to get them back from moving your right hand, they'll go work for someone else, because neurons are too valuable to waste. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you don't try to regain function in your right hand, you won't regain function in your right hand. People were told, this is it, that's what you're going to get a week or 2 weeks after a stroke. Edward Taub has results with people who have had strokes months, even a year or more before. But it is the people who are willing to keep putting the pegs in the holes, or picking up the pennies, or doing these small things and doing them badly and awkwardly and feeling like you're about 3 years old again. The people who are willing to go through that frustration and a little bit of that embarrassment, those are the ones who recover the most function. This is why I want you to learn to write badly, because you have to be willing to write badly in order to write well. Because on any given day, you never know whether you're going to write something really fabulous or whether it's going to be complete and utter dreck. And you just have to be willing to sit down and see what happens. And it's the people who keep sitting down and keep trying are the people who get it. So you got to be willing to write badly. Okay? So our brains are what is called plastic. Neuroplasticity means our brains change and grow throughout our entire lives. And that is very, very good news. Because it means we get all the benefit of the experience of being calmer and happier and all those other things, and we get to keep changing and improving our brains. But we still have these questions. So, am I losing my mind? That's a really good one. No, your brain is changing. There are some losses, and I will talk about that in a little bit, but there are some surprising gains as well. I thought people might be wondering about this. How can I write if I can't even find my keys? Excuse me a moment. How can I write if I can't even find my keys? Anybody relate to that? Where are your keys right now? Do you know? Remember the commercial? It's 11 o'clock. Parents, you know where your children are. It's 10:35. Do you know where your keys are? Here's the answer. Terry Pratchett is England's #1 best-selling author and a fabulous writer, by the way. He has been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and I will tell you that the books that he's written since his diagnosis are the best in his career. So don't think you're out of it. By the way, when we're 50 and better, and we lose our keys, we worry. Am I losing my mind? Do I have dementia? Should I be tested for Alzheimer's? Anyone have that thought? Yeah. So what do you call it when a 25-year-old loses their keys? Pardon? Carelessness? Ditzy. They're ditzy, they're careless, whatever. We call it losing your keys. A 25-year-old does not worry about that. Just find my keys and keep going. Are you really creative? I didn't hear too many people ask that, which I'm delighted about. You all have the assumption that you are writers, which is cool. The truth is the Pope still Catholic? If you're still breathing, you're creative. Is it too late? This was a question on some people's minds. No, it's not. Here's a partial list of writers who started writing late. Richard Adams, Watership Down, early 50s. Eugenia West did her first book at 56 and her second book at 84. I'm particularly fond of Eugenia because there was a big gap between my first book and my second book. This has my heart. You can read the rest of the list. Donald Ray Pollock, Double All the Time in his late 50s. Amy Clement, her first poetry collection at 63. Frank McCourt, Angelus Ashes, mid-60s. Laura Ingalls Wilder, the author of the Little House books, didn't write those until she was in her late 60s, which back then was pretty late. Beth Overmeyer did her first book at 70. She was working with Kate St. Vincent Vogel in the back there. Yay, Kate! So this is one of Kate's students. She did her first of 3 books so far at 71. And I think the reason she's being so prolific is because she's tap dancing. And I'll explain why in a little bit. So Mary Wesley, Harriet Dorr, Glenna Johnson Smith, her first book at 90. Plenty of time. The scary question, what if I die before I finish? Ann Landers said this. So someone wrote in and said, but I'll be 56 if I go to med school. In 4 years, I'll be 56. And she said, well, how old will you be in 4 years if you don't go to med school? You're going to be that age in 5 years, whatever that age is. The truth is, the question is, do you want to live the last decades of your life with the joy and satisfaction of challenging yourself to do something you're passionate about? Or do you want to live with the pain and disappointment of knowing you didn't fully show up for your own life? So it is not too late. We are right on track. Do I have what it takes? Yes. Do I have what it takes to keep up with the changes in the media and how things are changing? Do I have enough? Do I have what I need? Yes, because part of what you have is the experience at acquiring new skills. And you have confidence, and you have experience. And you are calmer and easier, so it's easier to learn. Does it matter if I write? I don't know if anybody ever wonder this. Like at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're like, does it even matter? Yes, it matters. All of us have a unique perspective. We all have a voice to share. And writing improves your life. Being creative is really good for the 50 and better brain. Well, really good for any brain. But it is really good whether or not you publish, how you share, whether you self-publish, whether you do an ebook, whether you do a blog, whether you don't share your writing with anybody except your best friend. Your life will improve because you're writing. So yes, it matters. Now, I want to give you just a few brain basics. You all have a copy of my book, so you can read the details in there. By the way, the books have all been signed, and signed slightly differently, so I'm trusting to synchronicity to get the right inscription to the right person. Hopefully there'll be a lot of really synchronistic moments. If you would like, I'm happy to personalize it by writing your name in at the break or at the lunch break. And also, by the way, during our break and in the first part of the lunch break, our wonderful camera operator, Stephanie, in the back there, I'm going to say hi to Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie. Stephanie will be recording anyone who has a few words to say about my presentation. So if you liked what you heard, or you were impressed, or you learned something, or you got to laugh, talk to Stephanie afterwards. She'll film you for just a few minutes. And if you didn't, don't look for Stephanie. Okay, so back to the brain basics, the basics of what you need to know. First of all, I want to tell you that there's a lot of language There are a lot of areas in the brain that have a lot of very impressive names. Don't worry about any of that. Don't worry about the vocabulary. Don't worry about the specifics. There will not be a neuroanatomy quiz at the end. We're looking for the gist, the big picture, which is something 50 and better brains happen to do very well. So the first thing that you need to know about the brain, or your brain, is that you don't have a brain. You have a brain system. And just like you have a digestive system that is made up of your throat, the esophagus, the stomach, the duodenum, the liver, the gallbladder, all those bits and pieces, those are all separate organs that do different functions that work together to make it possible for you to sip your coffee, eat your Danish, get the nutrients from that, and get rid of the excess, okay? So that is different organs working together. That's what's true of the brain. They are different organs. If you opened up a skull, you couldn't get a neuroscientist to point and say, that part right there, that is the brain. When we say the brain, what we really should be saying is the brain system. Because there are a lot of different areas, and they do different things. And they collaborate fabulously well to make human consciousness possible. The next thing you need to know is about myelin. So here's the thing. When you tied your shoes this morning, there was a certain piece of, you did movement with your fingers, your feet, your shoe, all of that. You did all of that. There was also a series of behaviors in your brain. There is a series of neurons that fire in sequence for everything that you do. And when that series of neurons fires in sequence, it gets a tiny coating of myelin. And myelin is the white matter in the brain. It is the white fatty tissue that insulates that neuron's connection. So that, and the more you repeat a certain behavior, the more myelin that pathway gets, which is why it's so important to have habits. Lots of chapters in the book about habits. That's why it's so important to have habits, because you get that myelin coating. And the myelin makes that pathway more efficient, it makes it faster, and it makes it more likely to be your default or your go-to behavior. Okay? So you need to know about myelination. And what happens is you grow more myelin throughout your life, and as you get more experiences, you get more myelin. So the 50 and better brain has more myelin than the 20-year-old brain. And the 50 and better brain has more myelinated. It has more pathways that are myelinated. It also has more myelin on each of those pathways, or on many of those pathways, okay? Need to know about the left brain, right brain distinction. Remember in the 1970s when everybody was talking about right brain, left brain? I'm all right brain, so I can't possibly balance my checkbook. Some people would say, I'm too left-brained, I'm an engineer, I can't be creative. It's not exactly like that. It's a little more complex. There are differences, significant differences between the hemispheres, however. And if you're curious about that, you can take a look at a book called My Stroke of Insight by Jill Bolte Taylor. And I'm sure Majors and Quinn could get you a copy of that if you order or request a copy from them. Fabulous book. She herself had a massive stroke that shut down her left hemisphere, and it was months before the left hemisphere started functioning again. So she has a unique experience in seeing how the right hemisphere functions. And one of the things that she noted is that the left hemisphere perceives light differently. The left hemisphere perceives the higher speed light waves, which makes it possible to see distinct edges. So you see where one thing begins and another thing, or one ends, another begins. You see all those sharp edges with the left hemisphere. The right hemisphere is perceiving slower light waves, and so it sees the big picture. The edges get softened, and you see the totality, you see the gist of it. Okay? So, there are some things going on, left hemisphere, right hemisphere. So now I want to just switch to some creativity basics. First thing you need to know is that there are stages in the creative process. This is not exactly how I define the creative process, and I do give you the stages in my book that I think is actually going on, but this is not too far off. If you take out the discouraged napping part, napping is actually a good part of the process. Third stage, napping is a good thing. So you need to know that creativity comes in stages, and you need to know that to move through the stages, you have to shift how you're thinking. You have to shift from your normal left hemisphere dominant rational thinking to your right hemisphere's more metaphorical, more, sorry, I'm having a moment. The right hemisphere is the hemisphere that is more metaphorical, it's softer, it's able to see the connections between things. So it sees things that the left hemisphere won't see. So here's an example. This is, imagine, if you will, because it'll be even better in your imagination than it is in the drawing here. Imagine a giant steel pyramid that is balanced perfectly on its point, and any movement will cause the pyramid to topple over, crushing the little person in sticks here. And underneath that tip, there is a $100 bill. So the challenge is, how do you remove the $100 bill without disturbing the pyramid? I'll give you a minute to think about that. So how do you get it out of there? Someone said turn it upside down? You can't move, anything you do to move the pyramid is going to cause it to topple over on you. And the challenge is, how do you remove the $100 bill without disturbing the pyramid? Yes? Tear it in half, get under there and tear it in half, but there's still going to be a tiny bit under there. But you're getting closer, yes?
Bring in a big crane and grab the pyramid holder.
I like that.
That's a real rational response. Pick it up and move it, get a crane, pick up the pyramid. Unfortunately, that violates the conditions of the puzzle, which is without disturbing or toppling the pyramid, without moving the pyramid. So, yes? Scan it. Scan the 100. No, we want to remove the $100 bill. Hang on, just stop. So here's the thing, very interesting thing. If I were to flash words like fire and what's the meaning of remove to your right hemisphere, go only to your left, excuse me, if I could show it to your right eye, that would go to your left hemisphere, and you still wouldn't be able to figure out the puzzle. But because your right hemisphere was seeing and hearing, if you get it through your left eye or your left ear, your right hemisphere gets it, and you can see the solution to the puzzle. Does anyone get it? Yes. You burn it. Yeah, that's how you remove the $100 bill. So it's that shift that gives us the creativity.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
Burning the $100 bill?
Yes. Right. So here's the left hemisphere's insistence on logic. She says, if you're burning the $100 bill, then you don't get it. That's the assumption that the left hemisphere starts with. That's the rational, logical response. That's a $100 bill. We don't want to burn that up. The challenge is, how do you remove it without toppling the pyramid? So the left hemisphere doesn't want to let go. Even when you give it the answer, the left hemisphere doesn't. The challenge in creativity is that you are constantly shifting gears between the kind of thinking that you do with your left hemisphere, which is your typical, usual thinking, and the kind of thinking and processing and seeing new things and getting new connections that you do with the right hemisphere. There are times when you need to focus, and the left hemisphere is very good at focus. It wants to hold on to that. But there are also times to not focus. There's times to shift. So that's the basics of the brain and creativity for today's presentation. Oh, sorry, premature with that. All right, so brain losses. I mentioned that I would tell you about some of the losses in the 50 and better brain, because there are some. The first is that your brain is losing weight. It's the only part of me that's losing my Is that a bad thing? Yes. You lose about 2% per decade of your brain's volume, both the gray matter and the white matter. But one of the things to know is that a 50 and better brain is very individual. It changes, and there's a great difference between your brain and your brain. So you don't have to lose 2%. But that is the average, that's typical. You're losing some neurons and you're losing myelin. The second loss for the 50 and better brain is processing speed. This is where the 20-something brain really excels. It can process a lot faster. However, we are slower, but often more accurate. But we are slower because we're losing myelin. Remember, the myelin is coding the neural pathway, and that is what makes it faster. So as you lose some of the myelin, your processing speed slows down. So you're moving a little slower. The third thing is the tip of the tongue phenomenon. The I know you, but I can't remember your name phenomenon. The I've walked into this room and I don't remember why I came here. It's a big existential question of life. It's really important, 50 and beyond. Why am I here? That is happening because you're losing a little myelin. And the memory for a face is coded and held in a different part of the brain than the memory for the sound of the name. And the connection between those two areas in the brain, if it loses a little bit of myelin, it's compromised. So we have that tip of the tongue phenomenon where you can't remember the word. How can I not know that word? That's why it's happening. But if you wait, there will probably be something in the environment that will prime you and help you figure it out. And it'll come back to you. It may come back to you at 3 o'clock in the morning. It'll come back to you 2 hours after you've left the person whose name you know you should know, but you can't remember. Thank God we're all wearing name tags. I'll put one on. The fourth thing is that because of the loss of the myelin, because of your slowdown in processing speed, you have some memory concerns that are legit, and then you kind of casually wander over to your notes and you do a little look-see and brain changes. Yes, number 4. Oh, I knew it all along. Distractibility. What is it I'm supposed to remember? 5 other things have happened since then and I don't remember. We are a little more distractible at 50 and beyond. It is because our processing speed is slowed down. So a younger person has probably just as many distractions, but they recover faster. So distraction, but then the brain is focused back on what it was originally focused on. Because we have a little slower processing speed, it takes us a little longer to get back, and in that interim, you find 5 other things to do and to think about. So we're a little more distractible, and that is actually not a bad thing. Because in that moment of distraction, you've lost focus. And there are times in the creative process when that's exactly what you need to do. You need to lose focus. So that is why 50 and better, in a lot of areas, in the legal areas, in writing, in the arts, in history, 50 and better people do their best work after 50. Because we've got that. So you can actually take creative advantage of the distractibility of your 50-plus brain. So the next time you wander into the kitchen and you can't remember why you came there, give yourself a drink of water. Hydrating always helps the brain. And just let yourself be distracted. See if anything new comes to you. Okay? So those are the 4 losses: weight loss, processing speed, myelin, and the distractibility question. So the gains, what's going right with the 50 and better brain? The first thing I want to tell you about is called bilateralism, And I know that sounds kind of intimidating, but it is the most exciting piece that I found in the research. And what happens is that when they do a test of younger subjects and older subjects, and they ask the people to memorize these pairs of words, okay? And then afterwards they tested them on it. The people with the younger brains would learn the word pair with the left hemisphere, and then they would retrieve the word pair with the right hemisphere. So they're going from one to the other, okay? And so they tested them, and yes, the younger people were, on average, faster. But if you separated the older group into two subgroups, there was one group that used the same method. Learn the word pair with the left hemisphere, retrieve it with the right hemisphere. And they were slower than the younger group. The other subgroup, the older group, learned it with the left, and for retrieving, they used the left and the right. So they used both hemispheres, bilateralism. They're using both hemispheres, incorporating both sides of the brain, and they not only were as fast as the younger group, they were faster. I like that. I like that. That sounds great. So what happens is, as we age, some brains are able to practice a kind of incorporation, collaboration. They get different parts of the brain to work on one task that a younger brain would only have one area work on. It's like the difference between when you're 20-something and you pick up a chair with one hand, no biggie. But when you're 50 and better, you think, I should probably pick that up in a slightly safer method. I'll use both hands. So at 50 and better, your brain is doing this bilateral trick, or it can be doing it, and that is a really important piece, because that's exactly what creativity is. I mean, if our brains can do the bilateral thing, we're going to have a lot faster movement through the stages of the creative process and be able to get to the place we want to get to that much faster. I was so excited when I read about this. Like, oh, cool. And there is someone who's actually doing some research to see how if she can train people to do that. Because right now they don't know exactly why one group does the bilateral trick and why another group of brains does not do the bilateral trick. But there are things that you can do to build a better brain. And in fact, the 5 things that are in my habit, the chapter on self-care has 5 practices that I recommend, and those are all really good for the 50 and better brain. They're really good for the creative brain in general. But there are 2 standout pieces for the 50 and better brain. And the first is physical activity. If you are physically active, you will not lose as much myelin. You will not lose as much neurons. They did a study where one group walked 40 minutes 3 times a week. They got an increase in the weight of their hippocampus. They got about a 2% increase over the course of a year. The group that did not do the walking, that just did stretching, they actually lost in their hippocampus about a 1.5%. So it's a net gain of 3.5% by doing exercise. Exercise releases something called BDNF. Don't worry about it. It's brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's called Miracle Grow for the brain because it causes more neurogenesis, more new neurons being born, and it allows the neurons that you have to make more connections and associations with each other. So it's vital. So exercise is really key. Also, exercise can help ward off dementia. It will, the one thing that they found is people who exercise, who have a habit of exercising, are less likely to have Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. Not a guarantee, but it's, hey, what do you got to lose? Okay, it's going to make you more creative, and it's going to keep your brain healthier longer. The second standout piece is education. The better educated brain, checking time, yeah, we're right on time. The better educated brain is also less likely to experience Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. There is a nun, Sister Bernadette, she's known as. She was part of the nun study. They were able to follow these nuns throughout their lives, give them different cognitive tests at different periods, see what was going on. And the nuns all donated their brains to science after their death. So there was one nun, Sister Bernadette, who was kind of a cognitive star. She had her master's degree early. She taught elementary and high school classes for 28 years. She aced every one of the cognitive challenges and tests that she had throughout her life. And when she died, they autopsied her brain and they found she had massive damage from Alzheimer's. And she showed no signs of it because her brain was compensating. Her brain was doing that trick of engaging more areas to work together so the parts that aren't working are working well. So, your education will help you avoid Alzheimer's. It will also help you do the whole bilateral trick. They don't know exactly why yet, but people who are better educated are far more likely to be able to do the bilateral, both sides of the brain trick. So, you can't go back into your 20s and get that PhD that you thought you should maybe get, but you can become a lifelong learner. Education at any point is going to help your brain, and that is one of the beauties of being a writer, is that you get to learn new things all the time, and you have a great excuse to come in and interview someone. Hi, I'm Rosanne Bane, I'm a freelance writer, and I'd like to talk to you about your work here at the university. It'll open doors for you. So, take more classes, challenge your brain. This is not doing the Sudoku puzzles every day the way you always do them. You have to really challenge your brain. Learn a second language, take an advanced class, really study something, okay? So in closing, I just want to say that you all have a unique brain. It is going to keep changing throughout your life. And if you take care of it, if you work to build a better brain, it will keep getting better and better as we move on. So, please take care of your brain. And please share your voice. You have a perspective that no one else does. You have a set of memories that no one else has. We are all given things to share. And if you have the urge to write, you have the right to write. You also have a responsibility to write. I think we're all given gifts like threads in a tapestry. And if you don't add your few threads to the tapestry is that much weaker and that much less vibrant. So please add what you have. Join the chorus. And then the last thing is that there is a word that I use to sign the book, and it is a word I use to end classes and close presentations. And the word means the divine in me, acknowledges and greets the divine in you, and the word is namaste. Thank you all.
I really like the way Rosanne illustrated her ideas by modeling them and with the humor that she used and the interaction with the audience. Very participatory.
I think she makes things really interesting. She gives you concrete mind visuals. She knows her subject really well and can explain it in a way that it's real easy to understand.
My favorite part of her presentation, well, that has to be throwing out the brains to the crowd, right? I mean, I think what I loved about Rosanne's presentation was first of all, the props. Those were a lot of fun, but also the energy of it. And of course, the mostly hopeful message that, yes, there is hope for us after age 50. That was encouraging and a bit inspiring as well.
I think my favorite part was her energy and positive enthusiasm about the subject of what's different about being over 50.
So the most valuable thing was just her encouragement to keep going. She had mentioned that first you have to learn to write badly, and I appreciated that. And what she meant by it was that, you know, it's sort of about taking baby steps, and you have to be willing to write something that is not amazing, but you have to get in there every day and keep going.
Concrete science behind it, not just, hey girl, you can go, but that there's real science behind the fact that my brain is still going to function for a long time.
Oh, all of it was valuable.
I guess the way the neurons keep growing and changing, and that they keep increasing, and also I really like learning about the myelin and what we can do, the physical activity and what we can do to increase the myelin. That sounds very important.
I am more excited about going forward. There's always this thing that hangs over us as we get older. We're decaying, and you know, very exciting, very hopeful, and there are things I can do to make a difference for myself.
I think it's a combination of her writing in her book, which I already owned before I got here, but it's going to get me back on track. I've been off track for so long, and I have the time, and I have the inclination, I have the ideas. I just need to get serious.
I have the confidence in myself that some will like what I'm writing, some won't, and that's okay.
I would recommend Rosanne to any writer. I think whether you're just starting out or you're an advanced writer, you're going to find something valuable in her talks and her books.
I think I would recommend Rosanne to anybody who struggles with their writing process, which is to say anyone who is trying to write or even do creative work of any kind.
Well, anyone who wants to write and feels intimidated by it, no matter what age, I think she'd be great for all age groups.